I didn't really know much about Robert Eggers personally. I'd met him, I'd loved The Witch, and I tried to meet him. I wanted to do something with him for a while before, and I met him on a couple of other projects for about a year. And then I kept reading, and they're always really cool, the projects, but it was always playing a sort of English gentleman, and I'm just quite anti playing them. And I kind of quite flippantly said at the end of the meeting about the second project, I was saying, to be honest, I only really want to do stuff that's like really weird. And a few days later he said, well, I've been writing this thing with my brother, which if this isn't weird enough, I don't think I'm going to be able to get weirder than this. And I read the script and I was like, yeah, this is it's pretty wild.
I saw The Witch, which was Robert Eggers' first film and first feature. And I saw it under the best circumstances because I didn't know anything about it. I basically just walked into Angelica Theater in New York to watch this movie that I knew nothing about. And I watched it and I entered that world so easily. And it was a period world, a world that I don't live in and I really don't know much about. And I thought, wow, this is a skilled filmmaker. This is very interesting. Whoever made this film, I want to meet them. So I arranged that. We met each other. We found a lot of common ground, a lot of common thinking, even some common background, and we kind of pledged to work with each other. So one day he calls me up and says, I have the project. Here it is. It's you and Rob Pattinson. Yes or no? It was that simple. And I read the script. It had beautiful language. I wanted to do those things. I had a good sense of the adventure of shooting it. I knew it would be difficult, but I knew it would be the right kind of challenges, ones that I was interested in. So I was happy to do it.
So building an atmosphere for a movie is cumulative, and from the dialect to the design of the physical world to the format that you shoot the film on. The Witch is fairly conventional. It has a few things that are a little different, but obviously the Lighthouse has quite extreme format. I wanted to shoot in black and white to convey the bleakness and the austerity of their lifestyle and their world. On a very surface level, black and white also just says old. The aspect ratio is a rare aspect ratio, 1:19:1, which was an early sound aspect ratio, which again says old, but it also is a better. I mean, look, if you look at the history of painting, painters or photography, painters and photographers will tell you there's different canvases for different images. And I think if filmmakers could destroy cinemas and televisions and rebuild them new for every story they were telling, there would be films in a lot more different aspect ratios. But we were aware that, this was going to be projected on CinemaScope screens and on widescreen TVs, but we felt that it was okay for it to be in this box. This is a better aspect ratio for framing vertical objects like lighthouse towers and better for conveying the cramped interiors. I think because it's a claustrophobic movie, like knowing that it's going to be a box inside the CinemaScope screen worked for us. We also shot on black and white negative, which hasn't changed since the 1950s and has kind of a primitive feel. It bottoms out into the blacks bottom out suddenly in a way that's very aggressive and satisfying. It has a toothy grain and micro contrast. And then we wanted to go even further. We would have wanted to have shot on orthochromatic negative had it existed for motion picture cameras, but it doesn't anymore. But basically, in the olden days, in still photography and in cinema, film was not sensitive to red light. So if you look at daguerreotypes and things and you wonder why everyone is so blotched and tanned and stuff, it's because the reds in their faces are rendering black. So we used a custom filter to kind of have that look in our film as well. And then to sort of soften the harshness of the XX film stock, and to also, again, give something that was sort of transportive and older, we were using antique lenses, most of them from the 30s, but one as old as like 1905, I believe, an uncoated Pathé lens, which was only used for kind of lumberjack flashbacks, but nevertheless, it was used.
I've never had to look up so many expressions. I mean, there are expressions in the script which you couldn't even Google. I mean, it was sort of I've never, like, what is it? Something about straighter, more crooked than a Virginia fence. And I was like, what is all that? I've never even heard any, like, multiple expressions, and you couldn't find what they meant anywhere. And they're from some letter in 1890 somewhere. And it's like, I love all that stuff so much. But he had tons of photographs from the period, and then he'd found all these lumberjack songs, which there's actually weirdly a lumberjack song playlist on Spotify, which I've never, they have like 3 plays. But so I was kind of wandering around listening to these lumberjack songs, which are the kind of darkest things you can imagine, and it kind of made me start thinking about the character, thinking I like this idea of this guy who's in an incredibly physically demanding job, like he's essentially a manual laborer and has an incredibly delicate psychological state, and normally someone who's kind of having a bit of a breakdown, you normally see it from a kind of wealthy background, or not necessarily wealthy, but a kind of, I don't know, especially in contemporary stories, you work in an office or something, you never normally see like a lumberjack having a mental breakdown, basically. Probably totally wrong about that.
Well, when I read the script, it's a very articulate script. Doesn't talk so much about intention or psychology because the narrative is quite simple, but the events kind of explain themselves. And the language in it, because I'm quite chatty in it, at least for definitely the first part, and I have these beautiful long speeches, and it's 1890s, and it's written in a kind of dialect, kind of freely borrowed. It has the taste of Melville. And there's an accent. I was attracted to that writing because it was full of images and references that were very evocative, and also it was written in a very musical way. It wasn't regular, prosaic, common everyday language in any period. It was elevated. It was poetic. And I thought, what a beautiful thing, because that accomplishes so much in the context of the action of what we're doing. And the images are beautiful, and not very often do you get to do that in a film, to deal with that language and then root it in the reality, not make it a show, because this is a realistic film, basically. So that challenge to take that poetic and theatrical language and root it was one of the things that interested me.
I don't generally think about actors when I'm writing my stories. I generally think of just the characters. I probably should have thought of Robert Pattinson and Willem Dafoe when I wrote The Lighthouse, but I had a kind of superstition that I don't imagine actors unless I'm positive that they will say yes. So in my next movie, I did write a role with Willem in mind, and I knew he'd say yes, and he did. And we closed his deal the other day.
The hardest thing for me about movies is just you're just waiting around so much and you don't really know what's coming next, and so you don't really know how to pace your energy out throughout the day. But with this, it was pretty relentless, and then every time you had to shoot something, it was like a little mini play. When I'm not reading it with the actual actor, I like reading it with someone who reads something totally flat, and because it's kind of, you can sort of, you kind of have an understanding of the words, but you don't really know how you're going to perform them. There's something about the repetition of saying something out loud that it sort of it's like learning a poem or something. If you learn a poem off by heart, you suddenly understand it on a much deeper level. What I like doing in preparing for something is just, you have multiple different ideas which you just think would be kind of fun to do in the scene, and also sometimes you think about things which should be exciting for the other actor, like something which is maybe a little bit surprising, something which, so it gives them something to react to. I think it takes the pressure off yourself, thinking like, oh, I need to just be totally real in this scene, or like I need to be perfect. If you're just thinking like, you know, it's almost like you're telling a joke, kind of, and like, you know, the element of surprise is the most exciting part to try and generate.
The burial scene was very uncomfortable because they were burying me, and they had this idea that they would throw regular dirt on my body, and then when they got to my face, they would have some mixture of, you know, cake crumbs or whatever. But that wasn't working out so much. It was too difficult to control the shovelfuls, and I said, just bring it on. So my memory of that is eating a lot of dirt and trying to keep my breath and trying to keep my calm, because it's quite claustrophobic. No acting required. It was difficult, but once again, that's kind of difficulty that you invite, because it really puts your feet to the fire. It really forces you to be there, and the things that you're feeling in actuality, you are able to channel into the character's experience.
As far as preparing Rob and Willem, I give them a lot of my research, but tailored to their role. And each role requires different things, and each actor requires different things. So like both of them got like copious amounts of dialogue tapes and dialogue instruction, or dialect tapes and dialect instruction, but obviously for different dialects. And I did give Willem some documentaries and books and things about lighthouse keeping and lighthouse keepers, but with Rob, it was a lot of stuff to build a backstory. And I wasn't so much instructing him that this is your backstory, but here are tools and references for you to construct something for yourself.
I always try and pick a job which you think at first glance, like, oh, I can't do this. I don't have the skill set to do it. And the further away it is from any familiarity, it's kind of more exciting. If you conceive it as good, but I generally try and pick jobs when I'll like a script and then think like, oh, this would be really good if some other actor was doing it. And it's kind of like, you can try and be that other actor. But with Willem, it's as soon as he was cast, because I kind of, there's like a playfulness and like a naughtiness to all of his parts, even when he's playing something really dark, that it really brings something to the movie. It's not so, because especially something like The Lighthouse, it could be. The script was funny, but it's also like kind of brutal and sort of gross in a lot of ways. But Willem's like this little like kind of like naughty little demon, but it's kind of. It's definitely you just realize the power that a performance can kind of can elevate something. And also I just love working with somebody who's been working for probably over 30 years doing movies, and he's not jaded at all, still trying to find like interesting young directors, or people like he's always on the hunt for people, and just loves it so much still.
First day on location, all I could think is how beautiful it was and how perfect it was. They built a very beautiful lighthouse and all the outbuildings. The production design on this is incredible. Classic thing of you couldn't tell what was real and what was invented, because it was all invented, but it had such a good sense of place, just in how it was placed in the landscape and how it was done, that was a place to move into. That world was really complete, and God knows, and performers, they do their best work, I think, when they're given a good setup and given really strong challenges. And certainly, when I saw the set, I thought, oh yeah, this is going to be hell, but hell to do because it's not going to be easy, but it's a heaven because the challenges and all the materials were there to make something beautiful.